told the House measure will get approved in the committee, then it will move to the floor. But that has not happened yet. This is the Senate gets ready to show their cards on their version later today. Florida Senator Marco Rubio last hour saying that working families are the top priority on this plan.
It's not just enough to create jobs. Those jobs have to pay more. To do that, we have to wake up and understand that we are engaged in a global competition. All these other countries are cutting their taxes and getting rid of their regulations so that businesses will create jobs over there instead of here. And we've waited for 25 years. We've kind of languished in that competition, and the people watching this are the ones that are hurting.
So, Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel following the bouncing ball on the Hill. And Mike, good morning to you.
Good morning.
So now, what are you hearing inside the committee? Do they have the votes? Do they have a form that can pass?
Well, Bill, we're expecting some meaningful changes to this House Republican tax reform plan, but have not seen them yet. The Ways and Means Committee was scheduled to go into its fourth day of markup when lawmakers debate and offer amendments to the tax reform package. That's been on hold. We expect they've been going over the changes to the bill. The plan has been having Ways and Means vote on it today, with the House overall voting on the package next week. One controversial issue is whether folks from high-tax states like New York, New Jersey, and California would be worse off with a big reduction in those state and local tax deductions. The majority leader in the House from the state of California says that is not the case.
If you look at the overall tax bill, if you eliminate the AMT, you lower the rates, you move up the standard deduction, what happens is you will pay less tax when you do your entire tax reform. And so that's what happens.
McCarthy making that argument, but a lot of New York and New Jersey Republicans are not sold so far, Bill.
Neither in California, a few other places as well. The rollout today in the Senate, will it happen?
We're expecting that later today. The idea is going after the Ways and Means Committee acts. Senator Orrin Hatch is expected to roll out the Finance Committee version in the Senate. Their plan on tax reform, it's expected to be significantly different than the House plan. For example, it's expected to get rid altogether of the state and local tax deduction. A Senate moderate sounds cautiously optimistic.
We do need to provide tax relief to hardworking middle-income families, to our small businesses, and this bill appears to accomplish some of those goals.
Top Democrats say they will push to make sure tax reform helps the little guy.
Here's what we say. Put your corporate tax handout where your mouth is. And we're going to make sure that the American people, the middle class, are the ones that get the tax relief.
Soon we will have members of both parties arguing over two different tax reform plans. Bill?
Away we go. Mike Emanuel, thanks from the Hill.
The House GOP's tax reform plan cleared committee today, but then the Senate GOP released its own tax plan also today. That plan would preserve the estate tax, totally eliminate state and local tax deductions, and feature more overall tax brackets. Is the plan better or worse than the House plan? Does it change the priorities set out in the first one? Will it become law? Senator Tom Cotton is a Republican from Arkansas, of course, and he joins us tonight. Senator, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Tucker.
So I think a lot of people are confused, want to believe it's a good thing, but are confused as to what the core point is. If you could name one, is it to increase the number of jobs? Is it to increase corporate profits? Is it to increase GDP? What's the main point of this?
Tucker, to me, tax legislation is about putting more money in the pockets of America's working families and our businesses. Ultimately, that creates more economic growth, which creates more jobs, and especially higher wages for working class Americans. So the Senate bill that was released today, I would say, is just different from the House bill. That's the way our system's supposed to work. The House and the Senate have different perspectives. We'll both pass a bill, hopefully, and then we'll resolve our differences. I think, though, that the bill will be better, whatever turns out on the particulars, if we do one thing, and that's repeal the individual mandate of Obamacare. That is the most hated part of Obamacare, and it would save $338 billion during the life of this tax bill. That can pay for a lot more tax cuts for our families and our businesses in a fiscally responsible fashion.
So you keep hearing that America's corporate tax rate is really high relative to other countries, and obviously that's true. But the number of companies, percentage, that pay the full rate seems pretty small. And in fact, some companies get, tax subsidies. How would that change? Would the average corporation, do you think, under your plan, pay more or less per year under the
So what I'd like to see is corporations and businesses of all types engaged in actual engineering to build real products to sell to customers as opposed to tax engineering. So one of our goals here is to reduce the corporate tax rate from the highest in the industrialized world down to 20%, which is also below the average of the industrialized world, but also eliminate a lot of the special interest deductions and loopholes that they use to get down below the 35% rate today. I think most companies of all sizes would like that as well. Simply let them focus on the goods and the services that they provide to their customers as opposed to trying to game the tax system.
So if people stop gaming the tax system, that suggests to me that you would see corporate tax revenues rise.
I think in the long run, you will see revenues to the government rise because you see more economic growth. Again, this is the story of major tax legislation over the course of time. We all know that taxes impact our individual behavior, the decision to buy a home, for instance, or to invest in a green energy car under the Obamacare or under the Obama stimulus. So we all know that behavior changes when you pass tax laws. So what we want to do is pass a tax law that's going to let people make more of their own decisions, keep more of their own money. That generates more economic growth, which ultimately I think will generate more revenue.
Would there still be corporations that pay no effective taxes at all?
I hope not. That's not our goal. Our goal is to simplify the corporate tax code in a way that allows businesses to focus on business, not on taxes.
So you're going to get this line, I'm sure, a lot over the next couple of weeks. Why are you raising my tax? I'm not speaking for myself, but you'll hear this. Why are you raising my taxes but giving Apple, which is approaching $1 trillion market cap, a rate cut?
Well, our goal is to look at across the whole spectrum of the American families and businesses and try to make sure that anywhere on that spectrum, they're getting tax relief. Whether you're a big business, small business, whether you're young and single, whether you're older and you have a big family. That's the focus in terms of getting more money back into everyone's pocket. Again, there's a lot of particulars about this bill, but I think one easy way to do that, and especially one way to make sure that people who are in the working class are not paying higher taxes, is to repeal the Obamacare mandate, because it saves so much money. And it is itself a tax on people who, by definition, are working and working poor.
Last question. Are you going to allow people to continue to deduct their medical expenses?
The Senate bill does allow that deduction to go forward. I think the Senate bill has a lot of reasonable...
what was that about? I don't understand. If you're a Republican, you don't want to penalize people for taking the responsibility themselves, do you?
Well, there's a lot of provision in the Senate bill that I support that maybe will be in the House bill by the time it crosses the House floor. For example, the medical deduction bill or the adoption tax credit. That's why I say this is a first step. It's a good step. But we can make
that. I mean, the Senate. I mean, that's going to stay in, right? I mean, Republicans wouldn't want to discourage adoption.
So my understanding is the House put that back in their bill today. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But I think in the final legislation, you'll see things like the adoption tax credit or the medical deduction, which are not big revenue raisers for the government, but are really vital to the families that depend on them.
Yeah, to the small percentage, but they're real.
Yeah.
Senator, thank you.
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Yeah, good to be on with you.
Joining me also, from Washington to talk more about the tax plan, House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Kevin Brady. Mr. Chairman, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Brad.
There are some substantive differences, as we just heard from Mike's piece, between the House plan that came out of your committee and the Senate plan. How do you rectify those?
Yeah, so some differences, but a lot more unity. And I think maybe the most important thing for the American people, real action. I mean, the House Ways and Means Committee approval today, that's the first time in 31 years Americans have seen this complex, ugly, unfair tax code changed in a big way. And at the end of the day, look, where we're going to unify, both in the House floor and with the Senate, is letting people keep more of what they earn, getting their paychecks revved up, and more importantly, bringing jobs back from around the world, including where you're at right now.
But Chairman, you after all this work, after all this time, you really still don't have the New York, California delegation on board yet, do you?
Well, I believe we do. So we won't have every member from every state. But look, when you take a look at the tax cuts, this new family tax credit that people up to $230,000 in their family can use for the first time ever, then restoring the state and local property tax deduction at double the average rate, you really provide relief in these high tax states as well.
All right, estate tax, that's a big difference between the two plans. Where does that end up? Is this all going to be ironed out in conference?
Yes, it will be, but I'll just tell you this, death tax is the most un-American tax we have. It's still the number one reason our family-owned farms and businesses aren't passed down. And these families, these farmers, they're being doubled and triple taxed already. So, yes, we do have full and permanent repeal of the death tax in the House bill. We just feel very strongly about it.
What about the battles ahead? What is the biggest challenge for you as you look at that Senate plan to come together? I mean, is it reality before the end of the year? You know,
I believe it is, Brett, and here's why. Because we unified around President Trump with this one framework for the House and Senate to shoot to, that's, I think, the most critical thing. The House, you know, we are hitting the target, certainly did today. The Senate's going to as well. Are there some differences? Sure. But, boy, there is far more unity in this, and that's what makes this different than health care. And I still think at the end of the day, America's divided over whether Obamacare helps him. Nobody, at least nobody, should be defending the status quo of this tax code.
You know, Senator Lindsey Graham put it pretty bluntly about the implications of this. Take a listen.
The party fractures. Most incumbents in 2018 will get a severe primary challenge. A lot of them will probably lose. The base will fracture. The financial contributions will stop. Other than that, it'd be fine.
The implications of if it fails, is that the driving force here?
You know, I think the biggest impact if this fails, and it won't, by the way, is American people are saddled with this mess of a tax code. That's what's driving us. That's what's motivating us here in Congress. It is delivering on our promise, but more importantly, man, our families, our local businesses, we're continuing to lose these jobs overseas. That's got to end. And my belief is, Republicans believe we need a new tax code for a new era of prosperity in America, and we're acting on it. That's what makes this day such a historic day for the American people.
You know, repealing the Obamacare individual mandate, Mr. Chairman, would save $338 billion over 10 years. Some people say, why not do that and use those savings to help reduce taxes on the middle class?
Well, look, you know, at some point as this moves forward, you know, we are listening to members, and obviously the Senate has the opportunity to address that issue as well. What we know in the Ways and Means Committee is that we met the budget instruction. We think this moves us back toward a balanced budget, and these are still the lowest tax rates on our local businesses in modern history, and families at every income level keep more of what they earn. So this was a big step, and I think a very positive one.
Well, what do you think the biggest difference is? Is it the state and local taxes deduction, the fact that the Senate takes that off the table and you still have it?
Well, look, I think, Brett, at the end of the day, we'll work out these things out. We'll find that common ground. They're shooting exactly to the target that President Trump and the House and Senate put together earlier this year. And so I think it's healthy, you know, that each chamber takes a little different approach to this. Then we meet in the middle, find that common ground. As long as we deliver on letting people keep more of what they earn, a flatter, fair, simpler tax code, boy, it's going to be a big day for America.
Well, last thing, I mean, you can understand the skepticism because the plans substantively on big issues are different. So I get trying to come together, but there's still a large gap between the two.
Brett, there are so many skeptics in Washington, D.C. and around the world. I understand that, but I've noticed what used to be a zero chance of passing tax reform. Now I see 60, 70, 80, 90% likelihood this happens, and that's because we're not just talking about it anymore. We're acting on it, and the Ways and Means step today is crucial. The Senate financing taking up next week, crucial also. We're going to deliver in the House, and so what the American people are seeing are not just guesses, will this work, will it get done? We're actually taking action.
Mr. Chairman, we appreciate your time, and we'll follow it all along.
Great. Thank you, Brett.